It's time for our good friend, John Macaroon, who does a great job covering the Detroit Lions. He's cooking up articles all the time. You can check out all his stuff. He's joining us right now to break down the Lions and Panthers this Sunday. How you doing, John?
Man, it's great to see you guys. Oh, it's good times, man. 3-1 start to the season. Everybody's happy. Man, the weather was nice this week. It's a good time to be covering the Lions, and they're playing a team that they got a lot of matchups that favor the Lions, so it's a good time, man.
I want to ask you, and we'll get more into the specifics of the game, but just in your opinion, for the guys that are kind of questionable right now, can you give us an update on some? I know Amon-Ra St. Brown was held out this week. Jamal's been back, but who do you expect to play? Some guys you maybe don't expect to play and maybe rest this week, like Brian Branch, for example.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect Brian Branch to see the field this week. Real tough with that ankle injury. Hasn't practiced this week. We haven't seen him at all out there at the practice field at Allen Park. Amon-Ra St. Brown, we've seen him out there working with trainers. He told the reporters that he actually hit top speed yesterday working with the trainer around 20 to 21 miles per hour. So I just think that a player of his caliber and his work ethic and just his strong desire, I think he'll play. Maybe he'll be listed as questionable on the injury report that comes out there. Taylor Decker, I expect to continue to be out there. Frank Ragnow. Big V might be a little bit tougher. We'll see. You see his, return would be interesting. I look at the way in which this football team is able to withstand some of these injuries. I think a lot of the players that are limited will have an opportunity to see the field this week and get out there. Hopefully, maybe Kirby Joseph might be a little bit more tough to get back out there, being that a hip situation is always tough for a safety, being that you got to adapt quickly and move all around the field. But when you look at the Detroit Lions, they're able to withstand a lot of these injuries and still play at a high level.
Yeah, John, let's talk about a couple of players who are definitely going to be playing, at least we think so right now. So this to me screams like a game where the Lions should eat in the pass rush. Like guys like Aiden Hutchinson and Aleem McNeil should be licking their chops that they get to go up against Ikem Ekwonu and Chandler Zavala, who are both been terrible when it comes to pass blocking. Could you see this being another game where the Lions get like 4 or 5 sacks and are just constantly providing pressure on Bryce Young?
Yeah, absolutely. You look at Aaron Glenn's defense, and I think that Seattle game was a referendum when everybody was pointing to that game and you wanted to see if Aaron Glenn could cook up a scheme that would limit Geno Smith, and it didn't happen. I think everybody kind of took a step back a little bit and reevaluated. And guys, let's give credit to Dan Campbell. When he said in front of the media, I expect my reliable players to be reliable, he was talking about a lot of players on defense, namely Aiden Hutchinson, Charles Harris, Aleem McNeil. I think he was talking directly to that defensive line, and they understood the message because Dan Campbell tends to be positive with his players, tends to, talk in relatively glowing terms about a lot of his players. But after that Seattle game, the team really, I think, understood that they got to bring it. And boy, when you see a rookie quarterback back there, every defense, the coordinators, the coaching staff, the players, they got to be licking their chops waiting to get after a quarterback. So I absolutely expect the Lions to bring and actually the guys, you're seeing it, the team is only blitzing 17% of the time. Right. So they're actually winning their battles with a 4-man front. And if they can continue to do that, Bryce Young is going to have a nightmare day at Ford Field.
And John, by the way, for everybody listening, we're joined by John Macaroon, the publisher, All Lions, and host of the Detroit Sports Podcast. And John, it wouldn't be an interview I didn't mention Jameson Williams. I got to mention Jameson. That's been the talk of town. And I want to ask for at least for your input on this. For J-Mo this week, he's back. Amon-Ra St. Brown's excited. The rest of the offense is definitely excited to have him back and what he'll mean just being on the field and how defenses have to account for his speed. But your opinion, and you don't have to give me a stat line, but just what do you expect in terms of his involvement this week at home against the Panthers?
Yeah, I'm excited to see Jameson Williams. And look, all the talk has been about him being dependable, running the right routes, being out there and being a player that Jared Goff can count on. Look, here's the benefit of having Jameson Williams. You can't coach that level of speed. And look, Ben Johnson told reporters, and I think it's very fair, that if he's out there, and I expect him to be an active member of the roster this Sunday, he will make his debut, in my opinion. I think that it adds to what this offense can accomplish. Because I think if you're the Panthers, one of the players you're going to want to limit, and they've done a good job limiting tight ends, you're going to want to try and limit Sam Laporta. But what the Lions are going to try and do is try to find ways to scheme him open, being that he's going to get more attention. How do you do that? You send Jameson Williams deep. Now, I know early on people don't want to see the number 12 overall pick be a decoy, but there may be some plays that you get Jameson Williams involved early on, short passes, intermediate passes to get him confidence. But remember, he's still acclimating to life in the NFL. Despite what we may think of that, the Lions don't just throw players that are coming back into the wild and let them play 70 snaps. It's not going to happen.
Right.
So I think that you send him deep, you open up the middle a little bit for the likes of Khalif Raymond and Sam Laporta. And I think that if Jameson Williams can secure a couple receptions, neighborhood of 50 yards, that'll be a good performance. But early on, all that you're looking to see is he running correct routes? Is the timing good when his number is called? Can he get open in separation? And maybe if that one deep ball presents itself and he's galloping free, 5 yards open, let's see if Jared Goff hits him.
Yes, so the Carolina Panthers do very few things well. I would argue probably nothing well. But one thing that I kind of think is flying under the radar is that the Panthers have a bottom 10 run defense, despite having Derek Brown and Brian Burns. So could you see this being a game where behind that Detroit Lions offensive line, that Monty and Gibbs really kind of have another game where they could give you maybe $150 on the ground?
And John, does Gibbs hit pay dirt? I'm just going to ask.
There you go.
Does he hit pay dirt today?
Oh, does he hit pay dirt? That's what everybody wants. Everybody, all the fantasy experts that are out there,
right.
yeah, they just want Gibbs to break one. Look, obviously, the Detroit Lions are going to run the football, and Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be involved. That would be ideal if he can get out there and break one. But I just think that when you are a young player, like many have discussed, a lot of things have to go right with blocking, hitting the right holes, and turning on the jets. So I do think that he's going to be a little bit more involved, steadily increasing his touches. But for the Lions to win, you want to pound the rock with David Montgomery, because that individual sheds tackles at such a high rate. He is exactly what the Detroit Lions are looking for in a running back, in that he's tough to bring down, low center of gravity, and he's a gamer. Man, what a performance that he had. But yeah, I think Jahmyr Gibbs definitely, I think, can be even implemented more in the passing game as well if the Carolina Panthers start to load up the box.
Now, I want to ask you this because I kind of talked about this earlier, and people like to throw around the term must win a lot. And now, for this game, I'm not going to say a must win. I don't agree. You can't have a must win within 5 games of unless you're not winning any games. But the Lions are not in a position right now to have a must win. What I will say, though, John, and I want your opinion on this, you have the Panthers, and then you're on the road, Buccaneers and Ravens. I could argue that if you do not take care of the Panthers, because this is an offense, we'll just speak to the offense, with Bryce Young, they have not scored more than 20 points. Like, they're inept. They've shown that. Now, I would say do not let the Panthers build confidence offensively against you. And the Lions defense has held up so far. But could you kind of speak on that, the importance of this game with the Buccaneers and the Ravens, both on the road following this game? How important is it for the Lions to kind of keep their momentum going, to kind of just take care of the Panthers and make a statement?
Yeah, you just want, like what the coaches say, you just want to see steady improvement. Look, clearly, if the Lions play to their level, they're going to defeat the Carolina Panthers. You don't want to see mistakes. I don't think this football team now, with the makeup of who's in the locker room, they're not going to take anybody for granted. But this game is perfect because it's a revenge game. The Lions remember that the Panthers last year basically took them out of the postseason with that awful performance that they had out there at Bank of America Stadium. So they're circled this game. They're going to want to potentially do some damage and remind the Panthers that, hey, this is the new Detroit Lions football team. Look, I understand the highs and lows of NFL football. I definitely ride the wave of emotions with the football team, and I would not be happy if they lose to the Panthers. But if they do have a slip-up, this is a football team that can go out on the road and play at a very high level, defeating the likes of Tampa Bay and Baltimore, who offensively you could potentially take advantage of some things with Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson. So look, this is a football team that has a lot of great assistant coaches. It's a young and hungry football team that I asked Lee McNeil, hey, what does it feel like to be 3-1? And his comment was perfect. He's like, literally, John, We haven't done nothing. We need to keep on the necks of all our opponents. And I think when you have a great coach like Dan Campbell and a veteran leadership, they're not going to take any opponent for granted. And I think that this football team, even look, slip-ups do happen, freak things do happen with the Lions. We've all seen it. But this game, I think, is very comfortable. The Lions play well, and they leave Ford Field with the W.
Yeah, John, you kind of mentioned it earlier. I mean, in your last segment, your last talking point, that about the revenge factor with the playing against the Carolina Panthers, a team that rushed for 320 yards against you in the game that the Lions lost, that pretty much knocked them out of the playoffs, one of the worst losses of the year. Do you think this year, with the fact that the Lions are bringing in the #1 rush defense, can they hold the Carolina Panthers under 50 to just make that statement that this year is different and last year is completely in the past?
And by the way, John, Miles Sanders, the great Miles Sanders, and his 2.9 yards per carry, but continue.
Listen, I think under 50 might be around the number, but I look at it like this. If the Lions get out to a big lead, that might also help the situation because it would force Bryce Young to pass the football. Here's the great thing about the Lions and their identity. Man, defensively, they're really stout, they're aggressive, they're violent, and I think that they're going to play to the crowd at Ford Field, that loud crowd at Ford Field that just makes everything so tough. Yeah, I think the defense is going to play at a very high level. You look at the linebackers that are playing well. Anzalone and Barnes are playing off of each other very well. You look at the safeties, and they're playing at a high level. And the best part, too, is this game is the perfect game to reintroduce Emmanuel Mosley, who likes to hit as well. He may not get that many reps defensively, but I think getting him back and acclimated as well in a game where you have a lot of advantages is going to be great. So, yeah, this defense is going to step up and do a lot of things to try and disrupt the Panthers and confuse Bryce Young. It's going to be tough, man. A young quarterback trying to figure out the intricacies of Aaron Glenn's defense, it's going to be a long day for the Panthers. And I think the crowd at Ford Field is going to thrive off of some mistakes. And even potentially speaking, hey, maybe a Cam Sutton pick six, maybe a linebacker getting back there, taking advantage of a forced fumble. I think it's going to be a fun afternoon if you have the Lions. If you're a fantasy guy, pick up the Lions defense if you can pick them up.
That's a smart move right
That's
there.
a really smart
Again, great stuff, John. Appreciate you for joining the show. You can check out John's work, John Macaroon. Again, Detroit Sports Podcast. You follow him on Twitter. He's publisher All Lions and also host of the Detroit Sports Podcast. We got to have you on again next week, John. Appreciate you, man. Big time.
Thank you.
I love coming on. I think you guys are doing great work each and every day. Now, quick PSA for whoever the next Michigan State coach is, because I'm very invested in Michigan State. Any intimate actions that you're taking, please seek permission, contracts. We don't want any outside influences ruining the next Michigan State head coach. Use the Dave Chappelle sex contract. Make sure it's all consensual, and make sure that we get to the playoff. 12 teams. The Michigan State turnaround can happen quite fast, but like anything else, intimacy and distractions can ruin any program. So make sure for the next head coach at State, make sure you do things on the up and up. Get permission, please.
Official PSA by John Macaroon. Appreciate you, John, for all your help, man. Let's go to break here. That's John. He's amazing. Always in the chat. Does great work. Again, covering the Detroit Lions. We're going to head to break here when we get back. We'll chop it up for a little bit and head to mailbag. But first, can I hear about